So you want to create a low budget aquarium, whether that's planted or not. You're just having difficulty figuring out how to actually go around and create a good tank that's on a low budget. Well, today I'm going to show you guys how in theory you can go about doing it and how in practice I actually went about setting up my low budget aquarium. So stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back to the Aquarium Live with Andrew. Today we're going to be talking about low budget planted aquariums, and if you aren't looking for a planted aquarium, you just scrap the plants and you got a regular budget aquarium. So if you're interested in either one of those, hopefully this will be informative for you all, and if you do find it informative, hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more aquarium videos. And with that, we'll get into the three main topics and ways that you can save money when creating a low budget planted aquarium or just a regular aquarium. In order to have a good planted aquarium, just a regular old aquarium, you don't need to spend a lot of money on it. I think that's a fallacy of a lot of these other people out there saying that you need to spend a lot of money on a aquarium, when in theory you really don't, if you know how to spend your money and where to spend your money and how to spend it in the most efficient manner. So the three ways that you're going to be able to save money, the three areas you're going to spend money on when setting up a low budget planted aquarium or just a low budget aquarium, is in the equipment, the decor, and the livestock. So I'm going to go through each one of those categories and show you guys and explain to you guys how you can go about finding those things on a budget and being able to create a beautiful tank. Maybe not as good as the professionally aquascape tanks, but something you can be proud of to show off to your friends and family when they come over. So the first thing that we have to do is find an aquarium. And ideally, we're going to buy secondhand. Now, there isn't anything necessarily wrong with buying secondhand. You should be a little more cautious when purchasing secondhand. If you are new to aquariums or don't have a lot of expertise, you might want to enlist the help of one of your friends already keeping fish to help you in this process of finding a aquarium setup that has everything you need, that holds water and doesn't leak, that is a good deal, and all that type of thing, so you don't get burned on your first time around. So there are a couple ways you can go about finding a budget setup. So the first place, and I think the best place to look, is on Facebook Marketplace or something of the equivalent. Those places are going to have the best deals, in my opinion, for you to be able to find a complete setup for an aquarium. Another way that you can go about doing it is maybe asking that friend of yours that already has aquariums that they have a tank, a light, a heater, or a filter that they aren't using anymore or just sitting around they want to get rid of because it's taking up space. They very well might be able to cut you a good deal on that too. Or, keep your friends and family involved in the loop and let them know that you're looking for such and such thing or such and such tank, and they very well may come across someone in their normal conversations that is selling one and may be able to connect you to that person. The general guideline in all of this when looking for a tank and all the necessary equipment that comes with it, in my opinion, you really can't have that specific of desire. Now, granted, if you're limited by space, you might have to be a little more choosy, but when it comes to setting up a budget tank, you can't really pass up a good deal on a system because it's not your style or whatnot. If you're really trying to do this on a budget, the aesthetics of the tank, whether or not it's a bow front or a cube or a normal tank, really is sort of irrelevant, and it's more of setting this up for a budget. So maybe consider something that you normally wouldn't if you're trying to set up a budget aquarium. So the way that I went about getting a budget aquarium and all the basic components for my fish tank was my neighbor was actually selling his fish tank, and he just wanted it gone. He had some issues with his fish and didn't want to keep another fish tank anymore, and made me a great deal that I could not pass up for a tank, a stand, a light, two filters, a heater, a lid, decorations, gravel, for $20. Like, you can't beat that going to the store, buying this all new. Like, you cannot beat that. So I feel as though this first category here is where you're going to be able to save the most money so that you can spend it later on, particularly in a planted aquarium, on the plants that you want. Because in a planted aquarium, it's always best to start off with the most amount of plants that you can have to help your tank get established and set up for a good future. So now that we've gotten our tank actually purchased and the stand and everything else like that sourced, we're going to move on to the next step, which is actually the decorations and substrates. When it comes to a planted aquarium that you're setting up on a budget, just an aquarium on a budget, you're not going to be going out and buying like Fluval Stratum or ADA Aquasoil or EcoComplete or all these other really fancy substrates that, quite frankly, are very, very expensive when you start looking at cheaper alternatives I'm going to mention here, like dirted tanks that are capped, inert gravel substrates that you use root tabs to actually fertilize the soil for all the plants that you're growing, or looking into alternatives for your clay-based medias, which are what your fluval stratums and ADA tropical, all those types of soils are, like kitty litter or safety zorb, or there's one other one that I can't remember right now, but is another good option that you can look at. And all these things, when you look at it compared to your typical growing substrates for soils, are vastly cheaper than the other way of doing it. I think a dirted tank would be a really great way to go, just getting started out on a budget. The amount of dirt that you need is very minimal, and then you can also use a sand cap on top of that, and it would be a great look for your aquarium. And when you're removing and doing water changes, so what if you suck up a little bit of the sand that was, $4 for a 40-pound bag? You just plop that sucker back on there, and it doesn't really matter if you sucked up a little bit in your water changes. So what I actually did is I wanted to try something different in this tank that I'm setting up. So I went ahead and purchased some safety zorb, which is usually used for automotive cleanup, like oil spills, those types of things around a shop. And I, so far, am liking it. It's been set up for a couple of weeks now, and not really seeing any issues. My plants are still getting established, but overall, I'm pretty happy with it. It is rather dirty and messy, and there's a lot of debris that comes off of it. A lot of very fine solids that just sort of cloud the water. And when I say a little bit, right, a lot, there's a lot of solids that come off of it. And it takes a lot of rinsing, and eventually you just have to stick on a hang-on-back filter or stick in a box filter with a lot of filter floss to pull that particulate matter out of the tank. And that's what I had to do eventually, is I just caved and couldn't water change my way out of it, or I could have, but it would have been an exorbitant amount of water. So I just put on a couple hang-on-back filters with some filter floss and just pulled it out of the water column. Another way that you can save money, and is quite frankly also really expensive, is the decorations, like the rocks, the wood, the plastic decor, plastic plants. All those start adding up. We'll leave plastic plants for the next part. But a great way that you guys can save money is either by going out and collecting your own rocks, woods, things of that nature, as well as building your own decorations. And I actually built my own decoration for the tank that I'm referring to up here. I'll leave a link up there for you guys to check it out. And I think it turned out fantastic. Like, it is a beautiful decoration that I am very proud of, and I think turned out very well for the first time doing it. And I think it'd be a great thing for other people to try doing that are trying to create a budget tank. And the decoration that I made was actually made with rocks that were purchased from my landscaping store nearby, rather than using like aquascape rocks that are $4 or $5 a pound. These were 30 cents a pound. So you can see the discrepancy there, the disparity between 30 cents and $4. The rocks for my entirety, like that entire thing, cost $15, which would be 3 pounds of any other aquarium rocks, and that isn't going to get you hardly anything when it comes to aquascape rocks. I also went out and collected my own wood, which I let dry out for a couple of weeks, I would say, probably 4 or 5 weeks, and then put it in the tank and then sunk it, and now it's sitting in the tank as it is right now. So that was free to me. And the last thing that we have is your livestock, whether it be plants or fish and plants, depending on what type of tank you're going for. If you don't want to do plants or you don't want to do fish, just exclude that and go, spend all of the rest of your money that you have on plants. So this is the one area that I think that you can spend a lot more money on and want to spend more money on to be able to fill out your planted tank, so you get a good start to a planted tank and aren't struggling with nutrients and whatnot in your water column by having too low of a plant load. You can go out and buy tissue cultures or buying plants from online, from other people, other sellers online, or you can go the other route and you could look for plants locally that have already been grown in your water and people have had success with. Look for local hobbyists that are selling them. Look for people that are willing to trade their plants for other things. Ways for you to get plants cheaper and in a larger volume, so that way you can get a good start to your aquarium. And in this stage of plants, you may not have a very good idea of what works well in your water or what works well in your care. So I would try starting with the easier stuff and start graduating up to the higher tiers of plants as you slowly start growing them. So start with like Anubias and Java Fern, if you can find those locally, and then look at maybe like some guppy grass or an Acarus or hornwort or things of that nature for stem plants, or Pokostemon octopus, and just start with there and see which ones grow. Also, I found that for me, corkscrew val and dwarf change swords work really well for me, and they grow fantastically, and that's what most of these plants are here. As well as crypts. Those crypts are a little bit more expensive. And the final way that you guys can get, cheap aquarium plants is from yourself. If you already have established tanks, you can just take cuttings or extra plants from your tanks that you have and put this into your new tank and have a tank that already has plants that work well for you and grow well for you and can get it rocking and rolling in no time. So what I actually ended up doing was a combination of all of the things I have mentioned. I bought plants, I traded plants, and I used plants from my previous setups. So I took the extra plants that I had from this tank here, transfer them into my new tank. When I was selling my Celestra Prodanios, I was able to trade some of my plants that I had extra of for plants that this other gentleman had extra of, and we were both able to get new plants that didn't cost us any money additionally from what he was already paying for the Celestra Prodanios. And finally, I bought one plant that will eventually be going into there. It's a pink flamingo crypt that I wanted to get established under some better established settings in one of my other smaller tanks that is growing plants, so that I can then transfer them into this tank here as well as into my other new planet tank. And the last thing that I forgot to include, which you probably should want to include when you're making a fish tank, is fish. Some good ways to get cheap fish are either from local hobbyists, from bulk ordering from stores, checking out different online pages like Band, or your local aquarium club pages where they sell fish, or you can also swap fish with your friends. But I think the best way, what I plan to do in order to fill up my tank with fish, is just to spawn and breed my own fish, which is actually going to hopefully be the Danio that I think will go very well with the bottom dweller I'm going to be putting in there, which is my Celestra Prudanio, which is my Celestra Prudanio that I've also been breeding out. So I think those two will be a very cool tank combination, and is going to be free to me because I'm going to be able to spawn them. Hopefully my male and my Danio doesn't die, but in theory I should be able to fill out that tank for free. And granted, if you aren't coming from this situation where you have fish that you are able to breed, you might have to spend some more money to actually buy the fish, or fish and plants are the areas that the prices can go sky high depending on what type and how rare fish you want. But if you really want to have a full tank, I'd say the best fish that you could get that are relatively cheap are just getting some really cool guppies, some really cool mollies or platies or live bears that are really going to fill out the tank for you in the long run, and will eventually have too many that you can actually start selling to be able to finance some other fish that are more expensive, or other plants that you've been wanting, or other equipment that you would want but you don't necessarily need in order to have a fish tank. So that is how I went about setting up my budget planted aquarium tank. And I'll have to go find the piece of paper really quickly just to reference how much I spent on it. But I think I spent $56 for all of it. Maybe it was $65. I found it. So I was right. It was total of $56.50. I spent less than $100 to create this beautiful tank, and it's something that you guys can easily do and replicate. It just takes a little bit of thinking outside the box and creativity, and hopefully I've helped you guys think of some different ways of going about finding deals for tanks or stands and whatnot. And I think really all this comes down to right now, when you're setting up a budget aquarium, you can have an idea of what you would like, but you also sort of have to take what you're given and work with what you have and what you find in terms of prices and good deals. And then once you have that established, you can maybe start selling off some of your plants that you grow up very well to other people that are looking at setting up tanks. And then you can start diversifying your plants by buying those from other people or buying them online. But initially, I think that you should look for a great deal on a tank, a full setup, because there are great deals out there. You should be willing to look for them and not be set in stone on what type of tank and system you want. There are great ways to get good aquarium substrate, whether it be for planted tanks or normal tanks that are very cheap, very inexpensive, as well as making your own decorations that are relatively cheap and relatively inexpensive compared to other decorations out there. And then finally, setting up your plants and getting those figured out, because I feel as though out of all those things, plants is where you want to spend the most amount of your money to be able to have a large plant load to go into your tank to set yourself up for success. And then further down the road, start phasing out plants as you get a better grasp of what works in this tank or what works in your systems or what you can take care of. So I hope this video has been informative. I've been able to help you guys figure out how to create a budget aquarium, a budget planted aquarium that doesn't break the bank and isn't $400 or $500 for a singular tank, and that you can enjoy your tank while still also, having some money left in your pocket to go do other things or buy other things that you would like to spend money on. So thank you guys for watching to the end, and I hope you guys have a blessed day. And remember, if you guys haven't subscribed, consider subscribing and checking out some other videos. See ya.